Evaluation of Rupert, who I trimmed today, and these are the dorsal views. I'm just going to do the right front. It's the one that had the big crack, which you can see right here. But I did both front, and I only did the bars on the hinds. I'm going to trim them, balance them tomorrow. So the big thing on this dorsal view is the pillars. So these are known as the pillars. Well, this whole region is pillar. And you have to look at what this pillar is doing as far as length goes, if it's jamming, and I'll explain that right now. So what you should have to match the internal foot, that your length from here to here, which is dorsal, well, I kind of have it off there a little bit. When you move towards the back of the hoof, this should decrease in length. Right? You see how that's a little bit shorter? So if this was, let's say, I think he measured 3.5 inches here, that this should be 3.25 inches when you get to the pillars. And again, we're just matching the internal foot. But what do you see here? You see that this is actually longer. It's probably 3 3/4. So what has that caused to happen? What that has caused to happen here is jamming from these this part being long, and you can see it right here. This is a growth ring. You see it go, whoops. Let's try that again. There it goes up, and then it goes back down. And what it should do, whoops, crooked line, it should go like this. I'll show you in a different color. Let's do green. It should start here. Oh. Now I got it. Now let's do green. You should start here, and the growth ring should go back like that. Okay? So you can see the difference here, other than my little crooked line. So this obviously has an effect on his foot. So what I was able to do in just one trim, actually, it was pretty cool because he doesn't have, from this length here, it's affected his growth rings, yes, but he doesn't have much jamming up here in the coronary band, which is awesome. So what we see just in one trim, what I did was I took this dorsal to 3.5 inches, and I took his pillars. You see the little mark right there, this hoof, to 3.25. And we can actually see, I'm going to take these off so I can show you the growth rings. They actually settled right away. Not near as bad here. And I did find that on this side, the side that has the big crack, that this was actually longer. So you can see my black line there. That's kind of the more balanced trim, where it's 3.5 inches here, 3.25 here, and 3.25 here, right over by the crack. So I think this is, because this was longer, I had to take a little bit more off, which you see here. And I believe this is what's causing that cracking, as well as some other issues, which I'll share with in a little bit. So that is it, other than one more thing I want to talk about on the dorsal view. I'll look at some other views. Is the periopal region, this kind of white, well, this is unhealthy periople, white chalky here. It looks like it's here. It's gone here. That might be from the sander or whatever, rasping that off. But this will become much healthier as we progress. Okay, we'll move on to another view. Right front lateral, and the first picture I want to show right here is this lovely crack he has here. Now, sometimes you get really concerned about the crack, and yes, this could potentially cause some problems, but it has to be more the reason for the crack. And I'll show you what I've done to start the process of undoing this crack. You can see they've tried rasping where they cut it across. That just doesn't work. It's reactive. You need to be proactive. You have to say, why is it cracking here? And I can explain that in a few minutes. You can see he's tried to do some self-trimming here, but again, these pillars are always an issue. So I just wanted to show you that picture, because these are the two that I want to focus on, because this is the before I trim and this is the after I trim. So what do we see here in this left picture? First of all, the internal foot is shaped like this. Well, it's obviously pushed down there, but it should be shaped like this. Something like that. Okay? So you can see here that this region is pulled down, and that's all that cartilage that's being pulled down because his heels have been trimmed out and his tubules, he's underrun. His tubules have pushed forward, and I'll show you that right now. So and looking at this picture, what I see back here is that he has no heel buttress. That looks like periople, which I did trim off a little bit. But more importantly is to focus on these tubules. So this green line here is representing a tubule that runs down that's part of the wall, that runs down the dorsal wall. And remember what I said about they have to decrease as you move along, but we can see that these guys, that's about the same size, right? So this has a slight decrease that's occurring here, probably not the required 1/4 inch, but I want you to look at the angle of these tubules. Right now, this line is not on a tubule. If you look there, can you see the tubule right there? All right, so if I put that on an angle, okay, and I'll do another one here at the very back. I don't know whether you can see, like there's one right there. So I'm following that tubule. So you can clearly see here, these tubules should, whoops, I keep doing that. If they're following the internal foot, they should, I'll switch back to red now, be looking like, yeah, we're okay with the dorsal. Yeah, and they should be parallel, and they should decrease in size again to match the internal foot as you move down. So we're going to get shorter here. We're going to get shorter here. It starts to get all crazy, and I'll delete some of these soon, but you get the idea. And shorter here. Right? And these could even stand up even more right? Because you want that heel. And eventually you can see how much heel, if I go back to where this coronary band should be back up here, you can see how much heel is missing back here. Whoopsie. So we have our tubules lined up in the red, and they're decreasing in size as we move down, and that's the goal. So we can, from what we have, we can clearly see this is called underrun, and his cartilage is all being pulled down, his collateral cartilage, his digital cushion, his frog, everything's being pulled underneath, and I need to reverse that, and I need to get it to stand up. I actually think I even have that angle off, so it's even more tilted. So that's the goal. How do we do that? We have to work on the toe, and we have to push all these tubules. This tubule, we have to push it into this tubule and push it into this tubule and push it back until it eventually can push up the heel. And then the heel can grow to what it's supposed to be. This picture's a little bit blurry. Sorry about that. So what I did was I measured 3.5 inches of the dorsal wall, and then I went to 3 1/4. Whoopsie, 3 1/4 inches at the pillar, right? But it's still on the angle. But what I am doing is this takes time now. This is what you have to grow a new capsule. And what I'm doing is I'm trimming to allow the new capsule up here to grow with the tubules in the right direction, down, instead of being underrun like that. So you can see here where I took back some wall, and I've actually beveled all this to give it space. To give it space, the tubules, it being the tubules, to move back. And only then can we get this to push up. Right? This has to be right here, pushed up. All that cartilage has to be pushed back up. So that's kind of all I really wanted to talk about there. I shouldn't say all. This is a big process, and this is the one that certainly takes the longest time. We're trimming to grow a new capsule. Okay, I'm going to show another. I think the next one I'm going to show is the medial, and this one's really interesting too. Okay. And we can see here that same thing. We have a very similar situation, but this horse is really responding well. You can look at colored pigment. The pigmented foot is just wonderful because you can follow a tubule right along, and you can see the tubule there, the pillar tubule, our dorsal. Okay. I do also want you to notice that I'm going to pull this dorsal one away here, but you can see how we've got a little bit of dishing out that's occurring, and so I want to nip that in the butt. That's just leverage, and it's just hard. It's like dragging your fingernails in sand. Actually, yeah, that's what it's like. So pulling leverage can cause irritation, inflammation. Some horses are fine with it. The horses are not so good with it and are quite sore with it. Okay, so this is a great view to see how underrun his heels are. And he's got a little bit of jamming. You can see how this coronary band is raised, and it should be like that. Right? That's the way his coronary band should be. So we got a little bit of jamming, but he's pretty healthy. The biggest thing is replacing or growing heel. Okay, so on the trim, you can see here that my measurements were, again, I matched. This one was interesting because the toe was already at 3.5. Oh, sorry. Yes, no. Yeah, it was 3.5. It was the left front that was at 3.5. This was longer, and I had to trim it back. So the toe 3.5. Our pillars, I went to 3.25. All right. So again, you can see here where I've given some room. In here, there's my black marker where I mapped it out where I should be. I didn't have enough wall on the bottom of the foot to take it down, so I had to take it back through a bevel. And so this should be giving room for these tubules to start moving back and standing up like this. And again, that's not going to happen in a day type thing. You can have some movement right away if it's been fairly jammed and the hoof is able to move like that. But we're again growing a new hoof, so that'll fit the internal foot better. Okay, that's it for this one, and I'm going to show one more. I want to show the sole. Rupert's sole, again the right front. We see this lovely little crack here. But the big story here is these bars, and I was a little bit surprised when I lifted up his foot and saw these. So in the internal foot, the bars end about mid-frog, and they go straight back to the heel buttress. So if we take that's where the bar should be, and we can see, actually I even think it's supposed to be a little bit shorter, but we can see that I can't believe this horse wasn't in more pain. This would be like walking on stones. I'm going to take this this bar line away. Actually, no, I'm going to leave it there. I'm just going to change the color because I want you to see this. This is sorry. There we go. This is all bar. That is in the wrong spot. And not only is it in the wrong spot, it is long, and this length in here jams internally. Can't believe it's not more uncomfortable for him. So obviously on both sides it's occurring. We also see this one that has the side for symmetry. If you look over now on the map side, I can better explain the symmetry. My line down the center, which is going to allow me to really watch the symmetry right through the central sulcus. And we see that he is flared or more pushed out on this lateral side, and that's where the crack is, and that's why that has happened. These tubules have just collided, and they got to the point where the dorsal wall is quite strong, the tubules look good there, and it had to give somewhere, and it gave in this crack. So by me taking away this leverage, that was going to help that crack right away. But you can see here that I actually was cautious because he is showing, and I don't want to make him unsound. But this bar that laid way over here, I removed it. I'm still not down to the live sole, because what this bar does is when it lays over top of the sole, this should be sole here, if you go back here, all this underneath here should be live, healthy soil. The soil stops growing. It just stops it from growing. It impedes that growth with that bar laying over top of, so it needs to be removed in order to follow again that red line where the true anatomy of the internal foot is, and we want to match that. So I worked on both sides. The bars are really, really long, and that'll be something that you want to stay on top of every couple of weeks. You want to keep those bars down. They are not weight bearing. They are could be some weight bearing at the end here, but certainly not in this region. They help create a boundary for the sole. So I trimmed those, and I also released here between the bar and the wall. This is not buttress, this is a wall. So I removed a little bit of the bar down in this region here so that this will not keep the foot from being pushed forward. So my plan, or no, not my plan, the trim, right? If let me do it on the other foot because I released it here, so hopefully it's not doing that. So what this does, this little seat of the corn region here, and might be some buttress here, but this bar laying over pushes out on the wall. Okay? And if I'm trimming the wall to try and make the wall come back and make these heels stand up more, this bar is stopping it from happening. So this bar has to be removed so that it allows or gives space for the tubules to move. So the trim went pretty well. It cleaned up really quite nicely. You can see even that crack, I beveled it fairly good in here so that there's less leverage. This was high in that pillar region, that apex, the pillar region, the sole. And so I took a little wee tiny bit down, but really I have not touched any of the sole. I'm trying to get this sole to start growing again and be healthy. And so I'll check them in a few days and see if some changes have happened. Frogs look fairly good. He wasn't too thrushy. Central sulcus doesn't really have one. His frog stays very minimal, and that's due to the underrun heels. So that's it for Ruperts' hoof evaluation. And so the journey begins.